Hey everybody, it's Rory from ANS Gear, and today we're going to learn how to do some general maintenance on your paintball markers. Alright, so we've got Kaos guns in front of us, or I should say Azodin guns. So these guns are their mechanical versions of like the Blitz Evo, the Blitz 3. It's just their basic mechanical setups. And so there's a bunch of different guns that follow that same setup, just with varying degrees of parts on them. From the basic, like the Kaos or the Kaos 2, to the ATS up here, which has the square body with the more military look, the ATS Plus, which would have the stock on the back of it, to the KDII, which is the more advanced version of the basic mechanical one. Now they're all mechanical, they don't have any electronics in them. This one just has all the bells and whistles, like the two-piece barrel, the on-off ASA, a regulator. The other guns don't have that. One-piece barrels, just gas-through grips, so no regulation to them. They're just a simpler design. So the video that we're going to do right here is going to encompass all of these as far as how the breakdown goes, what the parts look like, things like that. So we'll go with the more complicated one, and the simple ones you can just follow along with, and it's very easy to do any kind of maintenance or troubleshooting, problem finding that you need to do. So I'm going to slide these three out of the way just to move them. And then we'll focus on this one over here. All right, so the KD2 has a regulator on it, has the on-off ASA at the bottom of it, has the feather touch, I believe, inside of here, which we'll see. And then the two-piece barrel, the clamping feed neck, got all the goodies. It got all the good stuffs in it, but with just the standard mechanical frame. So if you're not looking for a crazy rate of fire, but you want a gun that shoots fantastic, check out one of these. So we'll break it apart, get rid of all the things that aren't necessary for, well, I guess it's all necessary to take apart, but things that we're not really going to focus on too much. Get down to the important parts. Let's take off the regulator if we can. It's not going to thread off. Sometimes you can just thread these off and it will swivel and come off. Other times you will need to disconnect the hose, and then it's easy to unscrew. All right, so let's set that over here. We're going to take the frame off. We're just going to remove the rear frame screw, and then we can actually leave this one in. Just loosen it up a turn or so, and we can take the frame off, but leave the screw in there. Fancy. Now, for problems with leaking through the ASA, you'll see a leak at the bottom down here every once in a while. If this hole leaks, it's the O-ring on your tank right there. If this hole leaks, there is a piece inside here which you need to remove, and it's down inside of here. It's that little silver plug that you see at the very, very bottom, and you can actually see that it has two slots in it for a flathead screwdriver. Problem is, there's also the plug that's right here. It's sticking into the gun or the ASA, and you can see it on the other side right there protruding in, and it will actually keep this plug down at the bottom down there from being able to unscrew and come out. It just blocks it and doesn't let it come out all the way. If you have that leak there, you need to remove this. It's Loctited in, so usually you have to heat it up to get it out. And then you can unscrew that plug at the bottom, and there's an O-ring that sits underneath it. When you put the plug in on top of the O-ring and you tighten it, it flattens the O-ring and kind of compresses it out so that it seals on the wider part of the post here. And that's what you'll see when you screw this in. This goes in, it pushes on the valve of your tank, it releases the air, and the air comes through and goes up through the fitting, through the hose, whatever. But because that O-ring is on the larger part, it seals and the air doesn't get past. When you undo the knob at the front, we'll flip it over actually, this can move backwards, and the thinner part of the post is now inside the O-ring, so there's a gap, and the air that was in here can escape past that gap and come out the bottom. And that's how it bleeds off when you unscrew your ASA. But if you've screwed it in like this, you're gassing up and air is coming out the bottom. You need to look at the O-ring that is underneath the ASA plug inside of there. But they make it kind of a pain to get to because of that piece right there. All right, next, let's move on. Let's get our bolt out. Let's get the back end off with our spring guide. Let's get our spring out, our bumper out, our striker out, and that's it for that. Let's do our vertical ASA. By taking this off, it's going to release. Actually, I think that's not. I think that might be threaded in now. Yeah. On these particular guns, on this one, this piece is threaded in to the front here. On one of the other ones, let's say just the regular Kaos here. Once we remove the gas through grip, this is not a regulator. This ASA, the screw that goes up through it, which is this screw inside here, it actually threads into this piece on the bottom. You can see they're different shapes and whatnot. And the valve is going to look, this part's going to look different underneath there, but they're doing the same function under there. That screw, like I said, going through, holds this piece in place. So as soon as you take that screw out and pop this off, this might go bonk and come out. But in the fancy version that we're looking at right now, it's threaded in. So they use a shorter screw and they don't worry about that in there. Let's pull that off. You can see this is our cup seal right here. So this seals against the valve. We'll see that in a minute. And then we have an adjustment to the front that we can make on this. All the other versions of this don't have an adjustment on the front of that. I'll tell you what that adjustment's for. You probably will never use it, but it's there. All right, let's get the valve out and be done with this body. So valve plug, valve retainer, whatever you want to call it. Take that out and push the valve out through the front, not out through the back. Remember which way the valve comes out. We saw the urethane or the white, clear, yellow, whatever color you want to call that, come out first. So let's make sure that when we put it back together, it's going in the same direction. All right, so that's going to sit like this inside the gun. And then we've got this. This and this. So that's what your gun looks like when it's assembled on the inside. When you pull the trigger, this comes forward, hits the valve, valve opens up, air flows through the valve, goes up through the hole in the bottom of the bolt, out the end of the bolt, pew, shoots your ball. Leaks. There can be a couple different leaks in this one. Leaks from the front up here. If you have a leak from the front, there's a couple O-rings you want to look at. This O-ring that's inside, or on this right here. There's also an O-ring that is inside here. It's right on the inside cup right there. You want to check that one. And there's also one inside here that can cause a leak. So disassemble that and we'll see it. Actually, I'll pull it apart so you can see it inside of there. So let me grab the right tool. I think this one might work, and then we'll pull it apart. See if these will fit. These might be just a bit too big. They are. Let's see if I have a smaller set. I don't. So I might not actually be able to pull this apart for you, because these are not the right tools for this. But I might be able to get it anyway. Hey, look at that. I got it. So this can come out of... Nope. That's the one I think I'm looking for. Yeah. Up here. Here. And that's it. So this is what this looks like. Like this. when it is inside of here. Now, what is this? Why do you need something like this? Well, you can control basically the timing of the valve. If you want your gun the valve to open and close super quick, so running a shorter dwell time, if you want to think of it in electronic fashion, where the valve is open for a short amount of time, air comes through and pushes the ball out, you would be getting possibly a more efficient setup, but you might see a little bit kickier or a little bit louder bang to when it shoots, and you have to run a little bit higher pressure. You can do that. If you want a smoother shot, you can make it so that the valve opens longer and then shuts, or the valve is open longer by opening this up a little bit. Or when I say open it up, I mean backing the screw up and putting less tension on the valve spring here. So when the striker comes and hits the valve and opens it, the spring is going to try to push it back closed. So if we have this turned in and it's compressing the spring down, when this opens, it's going to come back closed faster. If this is back and there's less tension on the spring, this will open and then close slower because the spring isn't pushing as hard. So you can control the timing of the valve and give yourself a slightly different shot. Now that option is not available on any of the other ones. All you'll see on the other ones is your spring, your cup seal, which will be much shorter, and the valve. And it will only do one version of that, where the spring just shuts the cup seal down every time. So you can't control it. Giving you this gives you a little bit, I guess you want to call it more options. I don't know too many people who actually go into this one and monkey around with that. I guess you could. Well, I know you can. I'm not going to say I guess you could. I know you can. But it's not necessarily something you need to do. It's something you can do. So let's put this back together. I'm going to hopefully get this in here. I might not be able to get this snap ring back in just because I don't trust these tools. This is not a snap ring plier. This is just a small pair of needle nose, rounded needle nose. What do you know? Even a blind squirrel can find a net sometimes. Lucked out. So let's put this back together. Well, not back together. That's back together. Let's talk about this other part. See, the spring is on the inside of this. On these ones, you'll see the spring on the outside of this part right here. So don't be alarmed if you see it in a different configuration. Again, we talked about it being the fancy version. Leaks that you're going to find in this gun. Leaks that you'll see will be, when we're talking about the body, you'll get leaks from here, which we talked about, this section right here. You could get a leak from the barrel, the feed neck, or the bolt back this way. Those are going to be caused by either the cup seal not sealing properly against the valve, and that could be either the cup seal is just bad, or the face of the valve is bad, or you put it in backwards and you tried to put it together like that, or the O-rings on the valve have gone bad. Now, typically, more often than not, this front O-ring right here is the culprit when it's bad O-rings. This one, really, I hardly ever see it go bad. It's this one right here. This one takes the brunt of the force of the air coming in, and so it's going to wear a little bit quicker than this one. This one just seals the backside. So what's happening if you get a leak? Air is going to fill up this chamber right here. If this is not a good seal of cup seal to valve face, then air can get through the middle hole. It can escape up through the top. That's going to go then up into the bolt through that hole right there. And it's going to leak down there. It's going to sound like it's leaking up here, or it's going to sound like it's leaking back here, because the air is going to go, and once it comes up through here, it's going to spread out in all these different directions. If it's not the cup seal, you replace that and everything, it still has a leak, then this front O-ring, the air can be coming in here and it's getting sealed on the cup seal, but it's able to come up over the top and go past this O-ring. Then the same thing happens. Then it'll go into here and come out the back and leak, or up through the bolt and leak, up through this area and feed neck. So These two, cup seal to valve and front O-ring, really are the main culprits to breech leaks. Now, if you have a firing problem or a sputtering issue where the gun is just cycling boom, 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 and it doesn't seem to recock, check this O-ring on the front of the striker. That will probably be your problem. It's either dirty, broken, cut, scratched, or dry. Clean it up, relubricate it, replace it if you need to, or the chamber where the valve or the striker runs through, or the chamber where the bolt runs through is covered in paint or dirt or mud or whatever, and it's actually slowing the two pieces down. If they're not moving at the right speed, the gun won't cycle properly because it's just lagging and the air is moving places faster than the physical parts can move, and the gun won't work. Now, another issue that you can run into that isn't really O-ring related as far as a cycling issue, your regulator on this particular gun could be set too low. I believe these are about 350, 400 PSI or so to function properly. If it's too low, you're not putting enough pressure in the gun to make it work. Gun won't work. But that's not really a leak issue. That's just a cycling issue. I think that's it. For the body, at least. For the regulator, these, on all the other ones, are not regulators. They're just grips. This one here, you see this? This is just a grip. The air comes through here, flows up through the inside, and just goes up into the gun. There's no regulation process in that gun, or any of those ones, except for the KD2. This is the same regulator setup that they use in the Blitz, the Evo, I'm sure the Evo 2, whenever that comes out. The Blitz 3 has a similar setup, but it's not adjustable, which I think is great because people screw these up all the time. But same internals, just non-adjustable from the bottom. But let's take it apart so you can see where your leak problems could be. Don't need to pull that screw all the way out. Just a couple turns out so that we can unscrew it off the body. And then inside here, we're going to have our piston and our spring. Right there. Got our swivel. We've got this retainer ring, the snap ring we have to remove. Tool works great for that one. And then we pull out the adjustment core. So if you get a leak from the bottom coming out down here, check this O-ring that is on the adjustment core. If you get an issue with the regulator just in function, it doesn't recharge properly, it overcharges, it is putting too much pressure through the gun, they call it supercharging. This piston seat, so that little red piece that you see in the middle right there, that's the seat where these two pieces come together and seal. If that's damaged, has a hole, it's broken, chipped, cut, cracked, it won't function properly and the reg won't work right. If you get, if that's the problem, you need to replace this whole piece. You can't get that out and just get that piece by itself. If you have a leak from the very top, you need to replace the O-ring that's at the top right here. This is just a standard size 15 O-ring. You can use a urethane one, a tank one, a Buna one, it doesn't matter. It just seals inside the vertical ASA here. And if you get a leak at this little pinhole on the side, that is caused by this O-ring on the piston. When this sits inside, the pressure is building above the regulator. And if the air is coming out of here, that means that the air that's built up above is coming over the top of this O-ring and getting by it, and then it's bleeding out the side. So if that's the problem, change that or inspect it to see why it's doing that. Put that in there. Put this back in here. Put our snap ring back in. If you don't have a snap ring tool, get one because they're in all sorts of guns. It really makes it easier. And get multiple sizes so you're not trying to use one like this and getting lucky. Put our swivel back on, put our reg back together. If we completely tighten this together and then tighten this set screw down, which you would think would be the right thing to do, your swivel will not work very well. Okay, so what you need to do is, before you tighten this set screw down on here, put them all the way together, and then we're going to back it up about an, I don't know, 1/16 of a turn or so. Then tighten this down again. And then check our swivel. If our swivel moves freely all the way around and doesn't grind on anything, we're good. If there's too much slop, play, if I can pull this up and down and we hear it going cluck, 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 we've gone too far. It should just be far enough where the swivel can rotate all the way around. Then set it. It'll make it easier to put the gun back together. Okay, so back together. Start with our valve. We've got actually 2 directions the valve can go in, but remember we want to make sure that it comes in the same way. So it's going to go in this way so that our cup seal seals properly. And then the hole here. We've got one hole that's got a bottom to it and one hole that is passed all the way through. The hole that has the bottom to it is where the screw is going to set to keep the valve from moving when it's inside the body. So we want to make sure that that part is facing up so that when we push it together, it lines up with the hole that the screw needs to go into. And we should be able to see that right there. Oh, actually, I went too far. That's the O-ring that's right there. So we're going to turn our improvised tool around, and we're going to push it back. So it's right there. Now it's perfectly lined up for our plug to go into. We're going to tighten that down. When we get it to the bottom and we feel it touch the valve, we want to stop. We don't want to over tighten it. We just want it to be snug against the valve. We don't want it to let the valve rotate, but we don't want to crush the valve up against the body inside here. We can actually cause the gun to leak by doing that. So just when we feel it hit the valve, leave it alone. Now this can go in and we can screw it together. Sure that's all the way in. Take our vertical ASA, make sure that the O-ring doesn't de-seat. Tighten that down, make sure that it is vertically correct. We don't want it like that. You can see how it's like off center. So hold it in place with your fingers while you tighten it down so that it doesn't rotate out of position. From there, we can put the frame of our gun back on. We left that one screw in, so that made it easy to get the front hooked up. Tighten that down. Tighten that down. There. Again, don't overdo it. You don't want to strip anything out. Just make it snug. Let's get our regulator on. Now, if our reg was improperly set up or our swivel didn't work, terrible English, didn't work, then we would have to redo our regulator. But since we set our swivel up properly, we can spin it around and just hook it up with the hose and snap it together. Makes it very, very easy. Put our feed neck back on, and then we'll deal with the striker and bolt assembly after that. So the reason I put it all together before installing the internals of the rest of the internals to the body is that a majority of the time, probably 90% of the time, you guys are going to be pulling the bolt and striker out without taking the frame off. Now, if we do that and we try to put the striker back in the gun, it doesn't work. It does not go in. And that's normal. Don't freak out about that. The sear, which sticks up from here, which catches on this flat spot of the striker, it's in the way. The striker can't move across the top of it. When we pull the trigger, the sear moves out of the way and the bolt and striker can come across. So what we need to do is put our striker in, making sure that the hole is facing up and the flat section is facing down. And then we put a little bit of pressure on it and we pull the trigger and it will drop right past it. At that point, we want to stop. We can see, possibly, turn the light on here. There we go. That the hole is right here, that the bolt pin, this part right there, so that part is going to snap into and catch that hole down there. If I put this in, my spring into my striker, and actually, let me take that back. This needs to move one step further. When we would do that normally after we've got it all together, but it has to come all the way up like this. If we put our spring in right now, and then we put our spring guide in, and we started to tighten it up, there's a good chance, that one didn't do it though, of course, when I've got it on film, it's not gonna do it. But what happens is, this will rotate, you see how that rotated right there? It will rotate the hole out of the way, which means that your bolt pin will no longer line up with your hammer and you cannot snap them together properly. So the way around that, and the right thing to do, is put the hammer in, striker, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing, and then snap it one step forward so that the hole is right there. You can see it right at the back right there. And then we put our bolt in and connect our bolt into that hole. Okay? So everything's lined up. You can see that they're moving together, they're snapped together. Then we can go ahead and push it the rest of the way forward. Push, pull the trigger, it comes forward. But because the bolt and the striker are hooked together, there is no way for that striker to rotate and become out of position and then make it hard for us to get our bolt to go together. So we put our spring in, we put our bumper in, we close up the back, tighten it all the way down, cock it back to make sure that everything is working as it should. That works, safety works, everything seems great. We can go ahead and put our barrel back on and be ready to go. So KP3, or not KP3, we did a KP3 already. KD2, which really kind of fits all of their standard mechanical guns, the Kaos, ATS, ATS Plus, Kaos 2, KD2, very similar guns, all functioning the same way. Makes it super easy. Well guys, I hope this helps you out with any questions or concerns you have about your paintball gear or products. And as always, for all your paintball needs, shop ansgear.com.